Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. If you have any questions you'd like to ask or advice you'd like to give, come on over to podtherapy.net and join the conversation. Good news, everybody. There is still good in the world. Moments ago, I was contacted by a man from the Geek Squad at Best Buy who let me know that I had a virus on my computer, and by simply giving him all my personal information, he was able to fix the problem over the phone. Just when you've given up all hope for humanity. And now, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, that guy is Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Oh my God. Yeah, I've gotten that email. I've also gotten generous offers.
No, this was a phone call.
This was a phone call?
Yeah.
Oh God. And he says, hello, I'm from Geek Squad, and what's your social, and where do you live?
Yeah, well, he called from Geek Squad, and then he said, I had a virus, and somehow I was on their network.
Oh, wow.
Like, no.
No.
And so I'm like, no. And I just hung up. Then he called me back.
Oh, wow. Okay, that would almost get me. Like, if you call back, you ever get the calls where the phone number that you're seeing has the same digits as your number? Like, at least the back end? Yeah. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Am I calling myself?
I get those at least twice a day.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I get a lot of phone calls from a very friendly woman who says, hello, this is Stephanie from your local banking center. And I'm like, right. How do you know the name of my bank? How do you know I bank at local banking center?
We should open a bank. You
just
and I.
Called local
banking center.
Local banking and home loans.
Seems legit.
And car warranties. That's the other one I get. Your car warranty may have expired. I'm like, what? I mean, maybe it did. I feel like it's plausible. So, but we are in a new location. Last week we are in Nick's Blanket Fort. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nick, for hosting us at Fort Blanket. We enjoyed it. This week we're trying a new location, which is my actual real life therapy office. And there are pictures that you will find on our Twitter, both of me therapizing Nick, who is classically laying on my couch, may or may not be wearing pants, and you will see some pictures of our little setup here at the desk. So check us out on Twitter, and you can enjoy that, or on Facebook. This time we will try to make sure we post those pictures. So lots of fun.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes.
Yeah. Fun times.
All right, so we have an interesting A segment today.
Okay.
Actually, this came up while Jim and I were out eating sushi.
Yeah.
We just happened to see you on SportsCenter.
Yeah. We're like mid-bite, and like I look up and I see this thing on SportsCenter on the TV, and there's like something crawling up there, like the little news feed, and I'm like, what? Like I grab Nick, I'm like, look. He's like choking in the middle of his shrimp.
Yeah, and it was a perfect story, so I tried to get some more information, and I don't really have the whole thing.
Okay.
But essentially what we got from the crawler is basically what's happening. So here's kind of what's going on. This has to do with mental health and the NBA.
Okay.
So
the National Basketball Association.
That
NBA.
That's the one.
Got it. The professional NBA.
Right. Not the National...
Boy Scout Association.
Boy Scouts. All right. Anyway, so this has to do with Kevin Love of the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, great player, all-star player.
Yeah, recently kind of became the unofficial spokesperson in the NBA for mental health.
Oh, wow.
After opening up about his challenges with depression and anxiety.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in a game against the Atlanta Hawks, I guess this happened earlier in the season, this past season, he actually had a panic attack, his first ever
in the game.
In the game.
Oh, wow.
And so the whistle was blown. He went to the sidelines. He said he couldn't catch his breath. He thought he was having a heart attack. So he tells the bench, like, I'll be right back. And then he goes in the locker room, goes to the trainer's room, and just basically collapses.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Pretty traumatic event that happened. And for anybody who's ever had a panic attack, like, it's no joke.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just having a little bit of anxiety.
Yeah, and he's an all-star player. Like, this is not some random guy. This is Kevin Love, like, part of the champion Cavaliers.
Right. Absolutely. Well, so since then, he's kind of become a lot more outspoken and kind of talking about mental health issues, especially in the NBA. And it has been met with kind
kind of mixed review?
Some mixed results. I mean, some people have been supportive of him coming out and talking about that and saying, you know, they can relate, and so they think this is a good thing. Other people, because of the stigma and just being naive, kind of look at this as being weakness.
Okay.
Like, well, he just can't handle it or something like that.
So I can see that being like the human people watching the game response, like one half going, oh, okay, whatever, he's human. The other side going, dude, you're supposed to be a superhero, like shake it off. But what's interesting is the thing we saw in the crawler kind of took it a little bit deeper. Which is the
next thing, which is really looking at the treatment itself and the owners having rights to the notes. Therapeutic notes.
Yeah.
So I had never really thought of that. To you and I, that seems absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
This is confidentiality.
Yeah,
confidentiality
I'm not telling you anything.
Vital to having good therapy. You have to know that what goes on stays in that room.
Yeah.
But then from the owner's perspective, they look at this as saying, no, this person is our investment.
Right.
In the same sense that if they have a knee injury and that is going to affect our outcomes, we need to know their health condition. So they are including mental health into their overall health and saying, basically making that argument. Now, not all owners are on board with this.
Okay.
And the NBA itself isn't on board with this.
I see. So it's a large conversation that Kevin Love's situation sort of brought to the forefront.
Right.
And now the teams and the league and the players are having this talk.
Right. So now they're going to have to weigh in on this and figure out a solution.
You know, it's so interesting because it's sort of topsy-turvy. So usually everybody's saying, guys, let's think about mental health as part of health, right? There is no health unless you have mental health. And ironically, the NBA and the Owners Association is kind of saying, yep. In fact, we agree so much that the league rules say that you're not allowed to hide your health status. You don't get to go get a private evaluation, a private MRI, or a private X-ray on your knee and discover that it's 3 games away from permanently blowing and you're never going to play again. And we're talking about renewing your contract for $10 million or $100 million. Their argument is we are entitled to that information by virtue of your career. You chose this career. Your physical performance matters. So we so much believe that mental health is part of health that actually we feel entitled to that information too. So they're almost making an equality argument. If it is true that mental health and physical health are equal, then it is inherently our business and you can't hold that back.
Right.
Wow.
Now, I see what they're talking about. Now, the long-term ramifications for that, let's just say that happened. Where does that line stop?
Right.
If the NBA does that, and then the NFL does that, and then let's say colleges start to do that, what's in the middle of that from, let's say, your current private employer? Because they are also investing in you too. Yeah. Not to the tune of millions of dollars, but they want to know that you're healthy. There has to be some sort of boundary set up between your own personal health and who you're working for.
Okay, this is going to fascinate you. I kind of disagree.
Okay.
Let me dive into this with you. I kind of do. The other day on Twitter, there was an article that came out from The Atlantic, and they were discussing how the President of the United States is expected to get a physical examination and how that's sort of released to the public, right? If he is hours away from death or is a huge heart attack risk, in theory, we're supposed to know. Now, ironically, we've had like 44 presidents and we never seem to get any information, but like Franklin Delano Roosevelt was handicapped. He was paralyzed due to polio.
Kennedy had his back issues that were very
and you know, so they didn't tell us this kind of stuff. And so there's this conversation of like, okay, well, shouldn't a president be fit physically to perform their duties? Now, there's an amendment to the Constitution which says if the president becomes incapable of performing their duties by virtue of physical health or mental health or further incapacitation, then basically his cabinet and the vice president can elect to remove him and place the vice president in power. I believe it's the 12th or 25th Amendment. There's a 2 in it. That's the best I've got.
Sure. I'm
Probably
sure
not
no
the
one will
12th
correct us
Amendment.
on that.
Yeah. So the article that I was reading was saying, listen, a lot of people are really interested in President Trump's mental health. And the article was making some interesting speculation that some have suggested that he might be in early onset dementia. And we all know that Franklin Roosevelt suffered a stroke. His wife, Eleanor, basically became the president and nobody knew about it, which is, inspiring, but also we didn't elect her. Like, you shouldn't be able to declare war or levy taxes. Right. And then the same thing had got brought up in other situations where not just FDR, but gosh, there was another situation it was similar to Trump. Oh, Reagan. Reagan also, it turned out, had Alzheimer's and dementia, and ultimately it took his life, and he couldn't remember anything in his life. And there's evidence that at the end of his term, in his second term, he was already going through some of this. So the argument is being made in this article that because all health matters, and mental health even more so for a person who has their finger on the nuclear button, there ought to be an independent, nonpartisan commission whose job it is to evaluate the President of the United States and basically publish a report. And their argument was, we have the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, which scores bills based on numbers and says, hey, we're nonpartisan, we don't have a dog in this fight, here's the math. And their argument is that that should happen there too, that the people are entitled to know the mental health status of the commander-in-chief. So I take that argument and I kind of contrast it and compare it with what the NBA is saying, where, hey, these are professional athletes. They're making tens of millions of dollars. The destiny of the franchise depends on our ability to predict their performance and play. We, the owners at least, have a right to know. And I think that there's an argument to be made. Like, another question is, what about a CEO of a really important company?
Right. Okay.
Like, that's important stock information. Like Elon Musk, in this last week, Elon Musk, owner of Tesla, owner of SpaceX, really interesting entrepreneur. He sat with a journalist and he admitted that he has been depressed and that he has not been sleeping. He's taken Ambien to sleep, and he's been under tremendous pressure the last year of his life, working 120 hours a week. Sure. Stocks fell. They plummeted. He lost $8 billion of value in his stocks the day the article went live. Right. Because the investor class reads about this CEO's mental health and thinks, okay, I don't trust this company anymore. And now he's talking about taking it private. So there's like 3 examples for at least an argument that says maybe this is some kind of entitled business.
However.
Okay.
Kevin Love doesn't work for me.
Right.
Donald Trump does.
Right. And if you're an investor in Tesla, Elon Musk does.
So, yeah. So maybe I would be more willing to give Elon Musk for Tesla than I would Kevin Love and his mental health status.
Okay, and I agree with that. I'll give you that, but here's the counter argument. If you are the owner of the Cavaliers and Kevin Love is your employee, you're allowed to know his healthcare status so that he can perform his duties. The NBA requires that you don't keep that a secret from the other owners and the other coaches. And the reason why is because you could pretend like your guy is totally ready to play and your opponents have to prepare thinking about him. And then in truth, you're going to bench him because he's completely debilitated, injured. And so like in football, that's not allowed. You can't hide Tom Brady's broken ribs. Like, you have an amount of time before you have to classify him as injured. And so in this case, the owner kind of needs to know, and the owner sort of has an in-writing responsibility to classify the player as injured reserve or whatever, or incapable of performing, or probable or questionable. And there's certain league rules that apply to that, which everybody signed on to. So I don't know, man. I think it's an interesting thing, but in our listeners' daily lives, if they're out there and they're thinking about getting therapy, a lot of them are wondering right now, wait, you can tell my employer? They can call and find out? Just for everybody's peace of mind, can you at least explain to the listeners how insurance works and, who does find out? After you've diagnosed a patient, who do you tell and who actually can ask you questions?
The only person or the only entity really that could have any of that information would be whoever's paying for it, which would be your insurance.
Now, what if your insurance is an employer insurance? you get it through. So you work for Walmart.
Right.
Walmart is your insurer. They hire Blue Cross, and then
so
you use
your
Blue Cross.
therapist would be able to report to Blue Cross. Blue Cross cannot